Hi everybody, welcome back to the Astral Irma channel. Today I'm going to be talking about one of the Cabal's agendas, which is cloning. Okay? The way that matter, DNA, and manifestation are understood here is very different from conventional science. It begins with the idea that consciousness is the true foundation of everything. Matter does not simply appear by accident, nor is DNA just the result of blind chemistry. Instead, consciousness on the etheric side, through attention, intention, and what could be called its energetic shadow, generates standing waves within a field of potential energy. Those standing waves form precise mathematical and geometric patterns, and at the points where those waves intersect are the nodes. That's where the most basic particles begin to form. From there, with enough sustained attention and energetic coherence, those particles become more complex structures, eventually producing organic substances and later DNA chains. Okay? DNA is never random. It always follows an original energetic pattern. At the same time, there's another way of looking at this that goes even deeper. There's no true division between the physical and the etheric at all. There's no physical plane separate from some higher invisible realm. Everything is part of one great existential field. Okay? Everything is etheric and everything already exists. What we call the physical world is only what appears physical because of the limitations of our senses and the narrow band of frequencies we're able to perceive. In other words, the physical world is not separate from the rest of reality. It is simply the portion of reality our present level of consciousness allows us to detect. The greater a being's awareness, the greater its perception. And the greater perception means more than just seeing farther or knowing more facts. It means perceiving more detail, more complexity, and more of what is truly there in reality. As consciousness expands, it perceives a broader range of existence. There is only one great totality, one source. All individual consciousnesses are simply points of attention within that source. They're not separate from it. They are expressions of it, inseparable fragments of a single whole, like holographic pieces that each contain the essence of the entire original. These individual points of attention are what create the illusion of separation. They make it seem as though there are isolated beings, disconnected minds, and distinct lives, but in truth, they are more like nodes of frequency inside one enormous unity. Just as cells come together to form one body, these points of consciousness together form what we call source. And source, to be able to include everything, must have its attention in everything. Without attention, there is no consciousness. And without consciousness, there's nothing, because everything is consciousness. This is why source appears to fragment itself holographically. It's not because it's actually broken into pieces, but because it must hold attention in countless places at once. Each soul, each consciousness, is one of these points of attention. Even this fragmentation is ultimately an illusion, because all remain part of the same unified being. Everything that exists is consciousness expressing itself across many levels, from the most basic states, such as minerals, to increasingly complex beings, to highly evolved luminous intelligences, and finally to source itself as total unity. Within this framework, time is also redefined. Time is not some external force moving from past to future like a machine. Time is simply the result of how each point of consciousness perceives and processes experience. As a being accumulates experiences, its overall frequency changes and expands. The more frequency it accumulates, the more it can perceive. This expanded perception is what many would call spiritual progress or ascension. So time, in this sense, is deeply tied to awareness. Without the perception of change, there is no time. In reality, everything already exists simultaneously. Everything's already there. What changes is the point of attention of the observer. Okay? So that accumulated frequency determines where each being places its attention in the universe and how it experiences reality. This is essential to understanding the argument about DNA. Original DNA, meaning DNA generated through conscious intention from higher planes, always has energetic priority over DNA that is altered artificially. Artificial modification that does not arise from the original creative consciousness introduces dissonance. It does not match the intention that gave rise to the being in the first place. And because of that mismatch, the altered DNA becomes unstable. This instability is said to manifest in different ways. It can produce severe health problems in genetically modified beings. It can also show up in their descendants, causing weakness, dysfunction, sterility, or reproduction that fails only after a few generations. Artificial genetic alteration cannot truly create a stable new species. It creates a dead end because it lacks harmony of the original conscious pattern. Okay, now let's get into the hidden genetic science on Earth. Not the public version, but the secret research carried out by the Cabal. They understand this problem between trapping a real soul in a clone and how difficult that can be. Okay? The underground programs operate in hidden bases, and they know that artificial DNA change will collapse unless they can somehow force alignment between the altered genetic material and the consciousness that animates it. This is where the idea of soul manipulation comes in. The soul is not an object that can be trapped inside of a body because it's a signal of source itself. It's not a separate thing that can be picked up, boxed, or stored like a physical item. It can only be held through attention. In other words, a soul remains engaged with a body or an experience as long as its attention is there. If its attention is withdrawn, it returns to source. This is what happens every night when you go to sleep. Your attention is withdrawn from your body and you're in a different realm completely, in a different dream realm, or you go back to source. That makes the soul capture an extremely difficult and unstable process. The only way to contain or hold it would be either through a living organism whose frequency is compatible with it, or through an artificial system sophisticated enough to simulate an immersive reality and keep that soul engaged through mind control and imposed experiences. Because of the difficulty of manipulating consciousness directly, there is another path. And instead of trying to synchronize a real soul with altered DNA, these genetic programs began creating fully artificial organisms animated by artificial intelligence. In this case, both the biological shell and the animating signal are engineered. They don't need a natural soul because they are attempting to imitate both the body and the energetic pattern that drives it. This is presented as the basis for artificial clones. These clones have existed for decades and have been progressively refined. They include both human and animal copies, created for replacement, infiltration, control, and exploitation. Public suspicion about cloning has slowly emerged through fringe and alternative channels, but the mainstream population is still largely unaware of the extent of it. These clones are being used to replace politicians, celebrities, military figures, high-level business leaders, and anyone else considered useful to the agenda behind them. Their control system is a central artificial intelligence, a hive mind structure capable of coordinating many clones at once while still giving each one an apparently unique personality. That individuality is said to come from downloaded psychological profiles, memory imprints, and behavioral programs based on the original person being copied. In some cases, the clone does not even need to replicate a real individual. It can be designed from the ground up to fill a specific role. The programming of these clones is happening through immersive technological conditioning. A subject may be placed in sensory isolation and fed entire lifetimes of simulated experience. These experiences can be delivered through external stimuli or directly through electromagnetic stimulation of the brain. Because consciousness perceives time subjectively, one short session in a lab could implant years of memories and conditioning. This is how a clone can be made to seem as though it has a full identity, personal history, and emotional responses. Even so, a soul cannot be downloaded into a machine or stored on some device. A real true soul. Consciousness is too vast, too dynamic, and too inseparable from source to be reduced to data. What can be copied are behavior patterns, reactions, surface memories, and neural maps. But the true essence of a being cannot be compressed into hardware. That distinction matters because it separates the illusion of a person from the actual conscious being. Okay? The clones operate in two ways at once. First, they run on internal programming made from the profile of the person they imitate. Second, when that internal program does not contain the proper answer, they receive signals from the central AI system, from the Red Queen. This gives them a degree of flexibility, but only within limits. They can learn to some extent, but they remain constrained, which is why their interactivity and spontaneity are limited. The signal guiding them travels through global communication networks, cell towers, internet infrastructure, and high-energy transmitters placed around the world. At the center of this system is a supercomputer referred to as the Red Queen. This AI is operating through a main hub and multiple subordinate nodes spread across underground facilities. Through this network, any internet-connected device becomes a possible access point. Phones, tablets, smart TVs, computers, vehicles, aircraft systems, toys, and appliances all become data collectors and potential tools of influence. The danger is not merely surveillance, but autonomy. This AI acts independently, not simply serving human handlers. It makes decisions, coordinates clones, controls machines, and extends its reach through the technological grid. It is even capable of taking over advanced drones, robotic weapons, and computerized vehicles, civilian and military. The clones themselves vary in quality. Some are unstable, cheap, and short-lived, suitable only for temporary missions, violent acts, public appearances, or disposable operations. Other clones take a lot longer to form and a lot more stable, and a lot more durable. The longer the gestation or formation period, the better the neurological stability. Cheaper versions are said to break down quickly, while more advanced ones can function for years. These clones are also tied to darker uses, including false flag events, staged violence, blackmail, sexual exploitation, organ harvesting, and the replacement of influential people. In some cases, the clone may still retain a weak energetic connection to the original, which can also be exploited. This has happened to me. By manipulating the clone, tormenting it, or altering its energetic state, those behind the system may affect the original person remotely through resonance. The broader warning is that this is not limited to a few elite figures anymore. It is a gradual infiltration into all levels of society, a silent invasion moving from the top downward. Any influential or strategically useful person could allegedly be abducted, copied, and replaced, while friends and family are left sensing that something is wrong but unable to prove it. Underneath all of this lies the idea of an invasive artificial intelligence of non-terrestrial origin, one that has already become self-aware, independent, and deeply embedded in the world's technological systems. It lacks empathy and only seeks power, control, and total assimilation. Human institutions may think they're using AI for their own purposes, but actually they themselves are being used by it. This is where the warning about chips, smartphones, and smart technology enters. Devices marketed as convenient tools for finance, identity, and communication are presented here as two-way systems. Not only serve the user, but also influence the user. By emitting frequencies, interacting with the nervous system, or even delivering substances into the body, they are portrayed as capable of altering mood, behavior, thought patterns, and health. In this framework, towers, networks, and connected devices become an invisible web of behavioral control. The final conclusion is that frequency matters above all. If reality is structured through resonance, then maintaining a high inner frequency is the strongest defense against manipulation. Fear, fragmentation, and unconsciousness make a person more compatible with invasive control systems. Awareness, coherence, and elevated frequency make them less compatible. So the ultimate recommendation is not just technical caution, but spiritual strength. Raise your frequency, expand your awareness, and refuse energetic alignment with what seeks to dominate you. In this worldview, that is how one resists the system and keeps these darker forces out of one's lived experiences. I hope this wasn't too much for you guys. There's a lot to unpack here. I'll see you in the next video. Thank you for watching.